It'll just take a second. Okay, Karen, it's on YouTube. And Andy, you can begin.
Okay. Good evening, commissioners, members of the public. Tonight, we're here for the Thursday, May 14th, 2020 Traffic Safety Parking Commission meeting. It's different. We're obviously not in council chambers. We're doing this via Zoom. So there'll be some changes. For the members of the public, the changes, if you haven't sent already, you can provide public comment via, there are 3 ways to do it. One is send emails to public comment, that's singular public comment, at burrowandgame.org. For that, please keep your emails to between 250 and 300 words, because that's something that can be read within the 3-minute limit. So that's the first way. The next way will be to, you can, if you open up participants on your Zoom, you can raise your hand, and then we will put you in the queue if you wish to speak. And the other way is also in that you can use the chat function on Zoom and then indicate what you would like to say if you're interested, or provide that, and we will read that. Ms. Brewer will read that information on there for the record. For the commissioners, the things that will be just slightly different is tonight when we make a motion, we have to do it on a roll call format. So Ms. Brewer will call your name, and then you will either say in the affirmative or negative or abstain at that point for the record. So with that, I turn it back over, or turn it over to Chair Israelit to kick it off.
Okay, let me call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Traffic Safety and Parking Commission on Thursday, May 14th. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a flag that we can do the pledge with?
We do. The city clerk will put one up. There we go.
Okay. Andy, Mr. Wong, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure thing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Next we'll take roll call, which is this different.
Commissioner Bush?
Here.
Commissioner Londer?
I would just note that I got a text. I think he said he was on the phone.
Okay. Commissioner Martos?
Here.
Vice Chair Wetton?
Here.
And Chair Israelit?
Here.
Point of order. Did you hear Jeff
Yes.
say he was here? I think his phone number is the 1443 number that's at the end of the attendees here.
Okay. Can we let that one in?
It's unmuted.
Okay.
Jeff?
Can you hear me?
Is that Commissioner Londer? Is that you?
Yes, that's me.
Okay. Can
I have him
you
I'm
down.
here. Can you hear me?
can you call him in again, Steph,
Yes.
for attendance?
Commissioner Londer?
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of multiple meeting minutes due to absences. Hopefully everyone did have the chance to look over the 4 meetings that we need to approve this evening. Were there any changes submitted? Does anybody have any additions they need to make?
This is Howard, Commissioner Wetton. I had a few quick items if no one else has anything.
Okay.
Okay. No, please go ahead and point those out.
Sorry. Yeah, so on page 4 of the December minutes. I think we actually went over the December minutes in our January meeting. I think I had a couple changes in here that didn't make it in. On page 4 of those minutes, instead of saying aware of the realities of how things work, I think I had a change of familiar with the relevant technology. And then on page 8, I believe of that same month, hold on, let me get there. This was on page 8, so that's page 12 of the packet. I wanted to strike the word insanely. I don't know if I used that in my description, but I feel like it's not appropriate for the minutes. And then on page 5 of the following month, which is page 18 of our packets, and I apologize if this isn't super clear. So this is page 5 of the January minutes. I said instead of connect important dots, I think that's very unclear. If we could just change that to connect important locations. And then on page 7 of the minutes for that same month, if we could say, I made the statement stated that Caltrans' plan is to cut down. They don't have an official plan. So if we could change that to Caltrans' proposal could involve cutting, that would be a little bit more accurate. And I'm sorry I know I was supposed to send that ahead of time, so I apologize for all that, but if you don't mind making those changes, subject to the approval of the minutes.
Through the chair.
Oh, there's one other. I'm sorry. Sorry. This one's important. I have to find it now. I had it and I lost it. Okay. Oh, on page 6 of the February minutes, it says that I echoed Commissioner Londer's comment. This one's particularly important. I only echoed his comment. If we could just strike that it says I echoed Commissioner Londer's comment, because that implies I had something to say about the Oculus shuttle, which I did not and would not, because they are a client of mine. So if we could just say Vice Chair Wetton felt it was misguided that Samtrans, and just strike echoed Commissioner Londer's comments.
Through the chair. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Wetton, are you?
That's it. Sorry. Very sorry. Thank you.
So through chair, what we will do is we will review the official record, the video, as well as the transcript, and then see what was produced. And if that's what was said, we'll have to keep it in. But if it makes, if we can change some of that, we will.
Okay, that's fine. So in other words, if it was an interpretive thing, we can change it. But if it said verbatim,
What was said, it's part of the record.
Okay. Okay. Any other commissioner have any other changes? Okay. And Mr. Wong, will we move to approve these minutes at this time?
You may, and I may have to reference. I think we might have to. Actually, we could do them all 4 at once. The 5th one being the April 9th, which we didn't have a meeting, so that's indicated on the agenda. So,
okay. Does anyone move to approve the minutes for me?
I move to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Bush.
Subject to the changes Commissioner Wetton proposed and verification.
So Chair Israelit. I was not at the December meeting, so I would have to abstain from approving those minutes.
And I was not either at the December meeting, and I came in late to the March meeting, so I really can't approve those in their entirety either. So I would suggest we go
Individually.
each month by month and have a vote.
Okay.
All right, understood. All right, does anyone move to approve the minutes for the meeting of December 19th, 2019?
I move to approve the minutes for December 19th.
Anyone second? Am I the only one?
Is that subject to the changes?
Yes.
Yes.
Subject to the proposed changes and verification. And I believe Commissioner Wetton, you have to second because you were the only other person in there.
Commissioner Wetton, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, I second subject to the proposed changes and verification.
Great.
Yeah,
Well-
Ms. Brewer will, how do we do this? All right.
So I'll go through and call each name, correct?
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Bush,
Approve.
Commissioner Londer,
Abstain?
Commissioner Martos,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Wetton,
Approve.
and Chair Israelit.
Approve. Great. Okay, then let's move on to the next minutes approval for January 9th, 2020. I was not present at that meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved?
Seconded. Subject to, or there was some changes in that one, Commissioner Wetton.
I had something in each of them.
Yes, okay. So approve subject to the changes and verification. Or second.
Ms. Brewer, should we take a vote?
Commissioner Bush,
Approve.
Commissioner Londer,
Yes?
Commissioner Martos,
He's muted. Commissioner Martos, you're muted.
Approve.
thank you. Vice Chair Wetton,
Approve.
Chair Israelit.
Abstain.
Sorry, before we continue, Commissioner Launder, when you're not speaking, if you hit *6, it'll help the recording since you're coming in on a phone line. And then when you want to speak, just hit *9.
Okay, 6 and 9.
*6 and *9.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'll do that.
Okay, let us then move to approving the minutes for the meeting of February 13th, 2020, with verification and correction if deemed necessary. Does anyone move to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes subject to the changes and verification.
I'll second it.
Ms. Brewer, let's vote.
Commissioner Bush,
Approve.
Commissioner Launder,
I approve.
Commissioner Martos,
Approve.
Vice Chair Wetton,
Approve.
and Chair Israelit.
Approve. Okay, last but not least, the meeting of March 12th, 2020. Anyone, Commissioner Bush, would you like to make a motion and just have a
I
streak?
may. Sure. I move that we approve the minutes for the month of March, subject to the changes and verification.
Anyone second?
Sure, second.
Okay. Commissioner Bush,
Approve.
Commissioner Launder,
Abstain?
Commissioner Martos,
Approve.
Vice Chair Wetton,
Approve.
Chair Israelit.
Approve. Okay, let's not let so many meetings stack up again in the future. We have to plan our vacations better. All right, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is going to be different tonight. It's for the public comments, non-agenda. Mr. Wong, should I still read the Brown Act?
Through the chair, yes, this part of the meeting still remains as is.
Okay. Members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future commission agenda may do so as part of the public comment period. The Ralph M. Brown Act prohibits the commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Now, do we have any public comments this evening?
There are none.
Okay, and none received through chat or email or any other venue?
I have none in the email.
Excellent. And none from members present this evening via Zoom or the public?
No.
Okay, all right, seeing none, let's move forward to item number 6, discussion action items. And I saw Ms. Beatty who's here. 6A is the community BPAC update, which is an informational only item. Ms. Beatty, take it away.
Yep, she's been unmuted. You're unmuted now, Miss Beatty.
Hey, sorry guys, I missed, somehow my audio cut out. Are we doing the BPAC update?
Correct.
I don't have anything for this item. I was gonna hold my item for the slow streets. So I'll hold my commentary until then, and we have some other members here to speak on the California Drive item as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll bypass this and move to item 6B, which is removal of the evening peak period on-street parking restrictions along the 1700 block of California Drive, Truesdale Drive to Dufferin Avenue. And
right.
I think you have a staff report for us, Mr. Wong.
Sure, and we have wait for just a couple slides to pop up. All right. So thank you, Chair Israelit. Again, this item is a continuation of an item we talked about at the March meeting. This is regarding a discussion on the removal of the parking restriction on the 1700 block. Next slide. We'll quickly go over the background since we went over it, just to refresh everybody's memory. While you have a discussion, and then again, the big part of this meeting is to obtain feedback from some parties, and then we'll just kind of quickly go over next steps. Next slide. I'll quickly go over this slide. Go ahead and yeah. 2016, as you can recall, we did a parking restriction on this for the 1700 block, which consists of Truesdale to Dufferin. Sorry, through the chair. Megan, you can go ahead and open the whole slide. We'll just go with that. Again, it's a PM parking restriction from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Oops, back one. It affected 6 on-street parking spaces. And at this time on California Drive, there was only a Class 3 bicycle facility, which were the Sharrows. The reason for this restriction was to enhance the bicyclist safety during the PM peak hour commute. This, as you can well aware, this restriction impacted the residents' ability to park during these hours. And at the time, I think it was commented that the parking restriction was noted as a short-term change in case we managed to get California Drive enhance the facility on there. And lo and behold, late 2018, the California Complete Streets project was completed. for this section, we were able to construct a Class 2 facility on the 1700 block. The residents, since the implementation or construction of this, the residents have requested that the parking restriction be removed, and such is why we're here. Next slide. As you can see on the bottom of the page, those are the residential units on the 1700 block. And you can see the sharrows. This is before the implementation of complete streets. You can see the Class 3 sharrows there. Next slide. And here is the plan of what was implemented. As you can see, there are now 2 Class 2 bike facilities, 6-foot bike facilities in the location. And we still have parking or parking spaces provided for parking. Next slide. And so back in our March meeting, we heard from many of the residents along that live in that residential complex. However, as you also recall, at this the March meeting, there were some concerns regarding attendance for folks because this is just beginning of the shelter-in-place order. So some of the community, including our community BPAC, wasn't able to provide any comment. And per the commission, after that meeting, after hearing that, they wanted to allow the BPAC to be able to provide their feedback, and that's why we're here tonight. So with that, we're at that next step, and I turn it back to Chair Israelite.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public regarding this agenda item? It looks like Mr. Menito Velasco is raising his hand. Are we unable to unmute him and give him 3 minutes of speaking time?
Yes, he's been unmuted.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Velasco.
Could you hear me?
Not very well.
Commissioners, good evening. I hope you and your families are well. It was great to see a couple of you walking around Burlingame. Actually great to see people walking and biking around Burlingame. And happy Bike to Work Day. Today is the second Thursday of the month, which is traditionally when Bike to Work Day is celebrated all throughout the Bay Area and the state. And so happy to celebrate all the bike improvements that have been going all throughout the city over the past couple of years that have gone through TSPC. I'm speaking regarding this item because I feel like this is a step backwards in overall traffic safety, not just for bicycle safety, but for traffic as a whole. I've been biking on this corridor since 2010, biking, jogging, and actually driving through as well. The restriction of the parking there that was installed greatly improved the safety for me and the others who use the corridor. And some of you might remember that the original proposal when it first came up was 7 to 9, 4 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. But there was debate, and the commissioners at that time, some of whom are still on the commission, wisely decided with a compromise of just going 5 to 7 p.m., which is the way it is, the way it has been since then, and the way it has been in the municipal code. So yes, there is a bike lane. Now it's been painted, but just because the bike lane is there, it doesn't really paint the entire picture of what's going on there. 3 feet of that bike lane, about half, is actually in the door zone, and it's so marked by the city with lettering and cross hatching. And the city actually discourages bicyclists to ride next to that door zone, which means bicyclists have to ride on the outer edge of that bike lane. At the same time, I'm sure you've observed that the drivers and the motorists who go through there actually drive on top of the bike lane or within inches of the bike lane. So what happens is that the bicyclists who are there are pinched between 35 to 40 mile per hour buses and trucks and vans and opening car doors on their right. So the benefit of having this for 2 hours of the day, the bicyclists coming home from the BART station are able to commute home safely to their dinner tables, cannot be overstated. So please reconsider. Parking is still allowed 10 hours of the week. That's 5% of the total week. People can still park there legally for 95% of the time. I hope you will favor safety over parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Are there any other comments before we hear from Ms. Beatty representing the BPAC?
It looks like Mr. Goodrich would like to speak.
Mr. Goodrich, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Hi, committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, but it would be helpful if you were just a teeny bit louder.
Okay, is that better?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just want to commend the staff for pursuing slow streets. Just the sight of bike riders and pedestrians cruising on Carolyn is a testament to our city meeting the moment in which we are living. Staff and the council met the needs of residents to get more space to walk and to roll, and that's just a great start and just well done. I just wanted to start with that. But when I look at this agenda item through that same lens of meeting the moment, it just fails. Traffic today is neither what it was nor what it will be going forward, but now is not the time to make changes that will make what is our greatest bike project that we have, California Drive, less safe for cyclists. It's simply a failure to meet this moment, and I highly, strongly encourage the committee to not do it. Prior to the pandemic, I cycled through the spot daily during the parking restriction window, typically 5 to 6 p.m. And in addition to Manito's comments about the pinch point, a point that was not brought up in staff's presentation at all is visibility. There are a few just south of this spot. There are a few office building driveways from the medical office building. And it's routine that there are, during this 5 to 7 window, there are employees leaving work in their cars, pulling out into fast driving traffic. And without the cars parked there, there's better line of sight. But quite frankly, there have been times when they don't, they're distracted or they're focusing on the cars, and even with a flashing light on your bicycle, they may not see you, or you feel like you're not seen. But when the cars are there, and if you look at pictures or just go visit the spot, you will notice that there is a curve in the lane and a curve in the street, and you are not as visible. And that is just clearly a safety issue. I'm a huge, as staff know, I really enjoy California Drive. I've in terms of bike commuting, but this is like one spot I just feel really adamant about. And I think for, as Manito said, for 10 hours of parking for the convenience of those residents, you are putting cyclists at risk. And again, let's just meet the moment. Let's meet the moment and not make a change that would make things less safe at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Any other speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none, then let's hear from Ms. Beatty representing the BPAC on this item.
Hi, I did want to check because I do think that we had emailed about we had some members or a member email comments about this item. So I would request that, can we check the records on that just to make sure that all comments got read? They were sent to the public comment email address. That's one item. Second item is I want to offer sort of the BPAC unanimous opposition to removing this parking restriction. To echo what Warren said, I trust that we've all been out and about. I live right near California Drive, and the people I see biking on California Drive right now are not your spandex-clad commuter warriors. I have seen families, I have seen little kids teetering on bicycles in the California Drive bike lane as they bike down with their families. And I think we really need to consider that the usage of our streets have changed. That includes California Drive, and we need to be designing for the safety of our less secure cyclists here. And we should not be removing parking restrictions when we are experiencing this influx of usage and this different types of usage. So I do hope you will consider sort of the changing nature of our streets when you take up this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's it then for the comments on this item. So is this something, Mr. Wong, that we would now open to the discussion with the commissioners for a motion or some sort of statement?
Through the chair, at this time, you guys can discuss. Once again, I think, again, this meeting was just to hear the other side and balance it with what you heard last meeting, since not everyone had opportunity. And again, this is if you do decide to make a motion, there is no motion, or sorry, there's not a recommendation put here. The city is just presenting this. And so it's the commission can make a motion however they want on this one.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from the commissioners then. Commissioner Londer, do you want to start?
Yes, sure. Like I said last meeting, when I first heard about this, I thought, gee, there's no problem with, the bike lane is there now, and why not let the cars stay there all the time, and restore the parking? But after hearing about the situation with the BPAC's concerns, after being there personally and seeing some very scary situations where vehicles were actually in the bike lane, and in one time there was actually a cyclist in the bike lane and a car. So it's a very dangerous situation. So I'm and right now, especially that there's a significant more people out cycling all over town. I think it would just be a very dangerous thing to allow cars to park in that little stretch because of the site visibility, the traffic coming in and out of the medical office buildings, just all the movements going there, and the curve in the road. It's just a lot of things going on that make it quite dangerous in that first section of the bike lane. So I'm inclined to leave no parking there for now, and perhaps review this when things, if they ever do, get back to normal. So I would not be inclined to support having cars parked there and leaving it open so that it'll be much safer for the increased number of cyclists. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Wetton, would you like to, or actually, I'm sorry, let me, Martos, Commissioner Martos.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Israelit. So I echo and concur with Commissioner Londer. I previously was in favor of adding the parking back in, but I have seen other commentary from other bicyclists with pictures and other things that have shown cars and trucks driving in that section of the bike lane. Hearing this new information also from Mr. Goodrich about, which I didn't consider, people leaving those medical buildings and turning into those areas. It gets very congested. I didn't think about that. So I am of the opinion now that I think we should leave. I think we made a good decision several years back to restrict parking during that time when traffic's heavy and bikers are heavy in that area. And I'm of the opinion now that I think we should keep it as no parking between 5 and 7 p.m. Ultimately, if there's a way to do it, I'd love to see a buffered bike lane, maybe closer to the curb, and put the parking out near the traffic part of the road. But I know there's some issues with the width of the road and the ability to do that. Door areas, things like that. But so at this point, I would say leave it as is, and with parking restrictions between 5 and 7 p.m. on the weekdays.
sorry. Commissioner Bush, could we hear from you, please?
Yes, thank you. I think, as I said last time, I think that having ridden that section of California, there is definitely a distinct pinch point there where you feel exposed as you're sort of making that transition out to the as the road curves. I think that Mr. Velasco's point about being able to hug the inside of the line without fear of being doored, I think that's a compelling argument, particularly where you have that pinch point. So it's not necessarily that you are going to be like out in the parking space as you're moving there, but during that pinch point, it's helpful to be able to take the full lane over to the side. I also agree that Mr. Goodrich's comment about the traffic coming out of the driveways is also an important rationale for keeping it. I think that it's also helpful to sort of feel like you have like an escape place if somebody's starting to take some of your space and come into the lane. So I think that the additional clarifications that we received tonight definitely are very compelling arguments for maintaining things as it is. I think last time I said that it felt like that we're at an unstable equilibrium on this place, but I mean, I think given those rationales, I think that this is probably a good place to be for right now, and then I think that it probably makes sense to evaluate it going forward, whether there was any incremental changes that we want to do to make it feel more safe.
Great, thank you. All right. Vice Chair Wetton, can we hear from you?
Sure. I don't have much to add to the other commissioners' comments. I was a strong advocate for putting this restriction in back in 2016. And I have been in the past a rider of this stretch of California, so I do understand how challenging it can be. So yeah, I'm glad that we've made sure that we could hear both sides of this question. It definitely has shed a new light on it. I would hope that the homeowners, the people who live in the community there who are impacted, I would assume they were noticed for this meeting. Through the chair, can I just confirm?
We had their emails, so we emailed some, and some of them are on this, and as well as put
They are.
notices.
Okay.
We had notices placed in the area.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I'm cognizant that there, I think I think safety is very important, and the arguments are compelling. I'm cognizant, and I think we do have to remain cognizant when homeowners are impacted. But I think more than anything, it's also very hard to make intelligent decisions right now about how to balance these things, because things have changed so dramatically in just a couple months, and we don't know what the new steady state will be when we finally are able to return. So I tend to agree with the idea that this would not be a great time to be making any changes without knowing better how the traffic patterns are going to adapt.
Okay, thank you. As far as my comments, I mean, frankly, I have never biked that stretch, and you all had made the decisions on this California's Safe Streets, Complete Streets prior to my time. So I feel not very qualified to make a comment on how safe it would be to bike or not safe. However, I do trust what my fellow commissioners have experienced and have seen. And although after the first meeting, I did feel sympathetic toward the renters and homeowners, I think that we do have to put safety above convenience And I'm just reluctant to do anything that would put people in harm's way. So I kind of have changed how I feel about this after hearing from everyone this evening as well.
Chair, may I interrupt?
Yes.
We received an email through the public comment email address, but it came in after you started speaking, but I wanted to make sure I read it for the record.
Yes, please do.
Okay, let me find it again. So this is from Madeline Frechette, and she says, good evening, commissioners. I am extremely concerned that this commission and city staff are at all considering adding a door zone hazard to the California Drive southbound bicycle facility in order to accommodate more convenience for a handful of community members. Are you really about to choose convenience over people's safety? Please choose to help keep people alive and injury-free. Warmly, Madeline.
Okay, thank you. And no other comments at this time?
No.
Okay. All right, fellow commissioners, do we feel strongly enough to want to make a decision, or is this something that we will turn over to the staff for their decision?
Through the chair, in this case, you may want to make a motion. So if we have to follow this up, if we have to take it to city council or something, at least we have what the motion that the commission weighed in on.
Okay, thank you. Do any of my fellow commissioners feel like they want to make a motion at this point?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So I move that this commission retain the parking restrictions on California Drive between Truesdale and Dufferin during the hours of 5 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday.
I second.
Okay, great. And then we need to go through, I guess, voting with Ms. Brewer.
Yes. Commissioner Bush,
Approve.
Commissioner Londer,
Yes.
Commissioner Martos,
Approve.
Vice Chair Wetton,
Aye, yes.
Chair Israelit.
I agree. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is 6C, street closures related to San Mateo County shelter-in-place order. And we have a staff report.
And again, we have a few slides just to throw up there to give you folks some reference. I'll just wait for that to come on. Thank you, Megan. So again, this is just an informational item. This is something that City Council has seen. It's regarding a pilot program to prioritize streets for neighborhood pedestrian and bicycle activities during the shelter in place. Next slide. We'll go ahead and give you just a quick update, how it came up, and then give you the project locations. Sorry, next slide. And we'll go ahead and do the next one as well. Next slide. All right. Go ahead and open them all up. Just to give you, on April 13th, 2020, the Community BPAC submitted a request to the City Council to consider closing off certain streets through traffic to prioritize the bicycle and pedestrian activities during the shelter-in-place order. Obviously, the intent of this was to provide greater space for physical activity during this order. On the peninsula, the cities of San Mateo, Foster City, and Redwood City have all implemented similar type programs where they've closed streets or some stretch of roadway. Staff reviewed the BPAC's request as well as consulted, spoke with our colleagues in these other agencies that implemented these, and we believe we could implement such a program, such that we drafted a staff report that went to the City Council on May 4th. And during that, there was much deliberation on this item, and based on some of the feedback they had, the council made a motion to support the pilot program, however, just limited to just a single street at this time. And that street is Carolyn Avenue between Oak Grove and North Lane. Some of this, the guidelines and restrictions of this, you can find, there was an e-news sent out about it, as well as it's on the city website. But just in a nutshell, some of this includes, obviously, the streets closed through traffic. Emergency vehicles are still allowed. All non-auto traffic, including bicycles, skateboarders, scooters, joggers, people walking, they're allowed on here, onto this. Some of the restrictions are, if the closure will be terminated if folks are not complying with the county shelter or the social distancing, as well as not having face coverings with them. So if the city receives 3 or more of these complaints, the city can terminate the project or close the street. Other items on this, that we also have block captains for this, and Miss Adrienne Lee of the, I believe she's the vice chair of the community BPAC. She has volunteered to be the block captain for this one. And her information was made available on the website for people to contact. Let's see, just to give you a quick update, this project, actually, the last bullet here is we worked with the school district prior to this implementation, and we had to revise the limits. It continues to be Oak Grove, but because school staff is still accessing Burlingame High, we've shifted that southern boundary to Mangini Way, so that it allows them access using that southern driveway, and they'd have to exit out the same driveway as opposed to going around the horseshoe. To give you a snapshot, here's what it looks like. Next slide, please. As you can see on the top of the page is Burlingame High. On the leftmost side, that's Oak Grove. And you can see the restriction is what's in red. So it starts from Oak Grove, continues just north of Mangini Way. Also included in this is the parking area over by the horseshoe pits and tennis courts. That was a request from PPAC to close off that as well. And right now with the shelter in place order, it's not being utilized very much. So that seemed fine. So that was also closed off, and appropriate signage and barricades have been placed there. The latest on this is yesterday morning about 9 a.m. It was closed or implemented. PD was out there with courtyard staff. And while I was out there, I did see some folks using it, as well as school staff able to access the school site. So we will continue to monitor this through feedback we get from the community, either through our communications we might receive. And then the Burlingame Police will also do some passing checks just to make sure everything is still in place, and we will monitor it that way. So with that, that's what I have. Back to the chair.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this agenda item?
Ms. Beatty would like to talk.
I'm sorry?
Lesley has a comment.
I'm sorry, who has a comment?
Miss Beatty.
Oh, Miss Beatty. Yes, of course. Miss Beatty, I was going to definitely call on you specifically, but no one else in the public at this point. Okay, it sounds like no one else wants to chime in. So let's hear from you, Miss Beatty.
Sure. So I thought it would be helpful for us to provide a little bit of the context behind the request that we initially made to make some of Burlingame streets into safe streets. And so what prompted this was 2 things. First is that just being out and about, the usage of the streets has really changed quite a bit in the fact that people are trying to get out of their homes, but also they're trying to comply with the shelter in place order. So they are trying to stay near home when they get recreation, and they're also trying to maintain 6-foot distance. Our sidewalks in Burlingame obviously don't offer the opportunity to get 6 feet of distance between ourselves. And so it has, led to a bunch of people who either, sort of dart into the street for the purposes of passing around other people, or people who are flat out just, walking or rolling in the middle of the street themselves. And these are people of all kinds, right? These are families with little kids. These are seniors with mobility issues. Everybody is really starting to use the streets differently. And we were concerned about safety, both from a public health, but also a public safety issue with having people in the streets when cars can use the streets as they're normally used to doing. And while traffic is way down in Burlingame, right, nobody is, coming to work. And I live in a neighborhood where we get a lot of cut through traffic. We also get a lot of traffic from Uber and Lyft, and a lot of that has really fallen off. But the cars that are left are going pretty fast out there because there's no traffic. And so we're setting ourselves up for situations where people could really be unsafe when they're trying to use the street. The second thing that we looked at was that other cities have rolled out programs that are very similar. And these are cities across the nation, but they're also cities right here next to us. And they include San Mateo, Redwood City, and Foster City have all rolled out their own slow streets programs. Really what slow streets are not closing the street entirely. They are just limiting the traffic on it to local traffic only. It comes with a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit requirement. And the way other cities have thought about it are really implementing networks of streets so that it's not like a destination where everybody goes to have a safe street, but that it's peppered throughout neighborhoods so people have the ability to access them near their own homes and use them. And they're also just supposed to be designed to not have people gather. So we really want to avoid social gathering. So we did make the request to City Council. And we were very grateful when it was added to the agenda and staff came up with the proposal, and we were supportive of it. It did seem like the majority of comments at the City Council meeting were in favor, but the council members were largely concerned about resident reaction. And so so the only street that was closed is Caroline, which doesn't have any residents on it. So I would say that we're really happy with Caroline. It's great. I don't know if you've been out there. It opened yesterday. There's people using it, and they're using it responsibly, and it's nice to see. We would like to see more. And should the shelter in place extend, unfortunately, longer than any of us would like, we would like to reconsider a proposal to have this throughout the neighborhoods so that we can offer the opportunity for people to use it throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, let's hear from the commissioners about this. We'll go in the same order. Commissioner Londer, would you like to go first?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
Oh, good. That's good. So I think this is a good start. I think there's a few things that could be improved with the Caroline street. It seems to indicate that cars can go through the barricades because there's 2 15-mile-an-hour speed limits in the middle of the street. So that would confuse me if I was a driver there. I would think, well, I can go through even though the barricades are there. And so they could somehow weasel around the barricades. And I don't know if that's been happening a lot. I saw the first day I was there, I saw several cars going through because it really wasn't clear that the street was closed rather than just go slowly. And it was being used. There were a lot of people using it. So it would be much safer if there were, only emergency vehicles if needed to going through. So that's one concern I had. Before the road was actually closed, I noticed there were a lot of people using the street, and there was a lot of people with blankets lying out on the grass in front of Burlingame High School. And so it was almost like a gathering point for people. And, they weren't in anybody's front yard or anything like that. They're more like in a park-like setting. And then at that time, there were cars really going fast through there. So at least now they're not going like they used to, since the street has been more or less closed off. I'd like to see it really closed and be very clear about it, and limiting the 15-mile-an-hour speed limits would do that, I think, as well as making the barrier more of a barrier rather than something people could weasel around. As far as people, hanging out on the front lawn, that's up to them how close they want to be and all of that. So I'm not sure what can be done. And then the other thing I noticed is that when you're coming on Oak Grove going east, and even before you get to the barricade, there's no warning that the right turn is prohibited. The right turn arrow sign is still there. The arrow is painted on the roadway, and so I would suggest perhaps is some sort of a warning that there's no right turn ahead, and maybe putting something over the sign at least to show that there's no right turn, and then also the barricades are south of the crosswalk, and moving these barricades north of the crosswalk would be more visible to the oncoming cars that are coming from the east or coming from the west going east, and then it would also give pedestrians a little bit more protected walkway on that side. Instead of being out from the barriers, the crosswalk would be inside the protected zone. So I think there's a few more refinements that possibly could be made, and especially on the Oak Grove side, because if cars are confused about not being able to turn going southbound on Carolyn, it could cause a car or two to back up, and then all of a sudden somebody could find themselves on the railroad tracks at a very inopportune time. So I'm really glad that we, have something that more safe than a normal Burlingame street, but I think it still needs a certain amount of refinements. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are really good points. Okay, Commissioner Martos, can we hear from you?
Sure. I had a couple of questions. First of all, through the chair, Mr. Wong, can you tell me how long this pilot program is on Caroline?
Through the chair, this pilot program will last until the whatever changes with the shelter-in-place order. Once those are lifted, the pilot program will end at that point.
Right, but they're doing this one street initially, and then a decision will be made after a certain period of time based on some metrics or some reason to either expand or just in the program or retain it with just the one street. So how long is it? What's that period of time? How long are we going to evaluate this program?
So this pilot program is only for the shelter in place. It's not, if this is something that the community decides to continue, that would be a different process.
Okay, so it was proposed that 5 streets be closed, and council was resistant to that, so they asked for a pilot on just one street. Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
The entire program was a pilot program, but so that the streets that were proposed in that pilot program were whittled down to the north or Carolyn.
So are the other 4 streets off the list? They will not be considered in the future as streets to close for public access?
And again, through the chair. So as I think I'd have to go back over through what the council said, but this is, we'll start here. If there's a lot of positive feedback, we can bring it back to city council and we can revisit including these streets. But at this point, this is where we've landed. Does that
Okay,
make sense? They can be considered, but it's after we get more community feedback.
okay. Yeah, because where I was going with this, I mean, I like the idea. I understand the council's concerns about closing streets in residential areas and you know, encouraging lots of people to walk up and down residential streets might be a concern to some people that live on those streets. But I would like to see this expand. And so I understand council's willing to try it out in front of BHS there. I think that's a good thing. And so then through the chair to Ms. Beatty, the streets that were selected, if council, if this could come back to council with other alternatives, is BPAC discussing other options for streets that could close that maybe aren't on residential, residential streets that may be attractive for people to walk down if we were able to close them?
Yeah. So we have talked a lot about this. I think one thing was that council did feel like if the residents on a particular street were in agreement, that they would be fine with a residential street being closed. They just didn't want to presume that it would be acceptable without having a near perfect record of feedback from each of the adult residents on the street. I have to be honest, I've already polled everybody on my street and I'm quite confident I could get 100% of people on my street to recommend closing our street to all traffic except local traffic. So I don't know. I think that will be one measure that's interesting. Obviously, there would need to be other criteria applied. As for streets that don't have residents on it, it's a little bit less. I don't know that we have great candidates for those streets. The other area that the other direction that we have been thinking is the places where there's real high density of housing. So the downtown areas where there are apartment buildings and there are just flat out more people on the sidewalks because more people live there. Those streets make a lot of sense because space really is needed there, whereas it may be less needed in the less densely populated neighborhoods.
Okay, good. So yeah, so I mean, I like the program. I understand council's concern. I hope the program will continue, and I appreciate very much BPAC and others bringing this forward, and I think it's good for our community. I walked through there last night, and it's nice. It's very different atmosphere. It's very strange walking around. It's so quiet. It doesn't feel like the Burlingame I've known for 24 years, but it is nice to get out and walk around. I appreciate the opportunity to walk in areas that I haven't had that much of an opportunity to do before. So I would encourage this to continue.
Thank you. Commissioner Bush, thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I have been a very enthusiastic supporter of this. I think that it's great that the BPAC has been successful in bringing this forward and having City Council approve it on Carolyn Avenue. I think that to Commissioner Martos's point, it seems like we need to have a framework that allows us to expand this to additional residential neighborhoods to ensure that neighborhoods that find this, or that streets that find this to be important, are able to implement it. Because I think that if we have one, then it then becomes a magnet for people to come in and join. Versus if we have it dispersed throughout the neighborhoods, then it is more of a neighborhood thing that happens. I I walk and bike a lot with my family through the Leon Home neighborhood, and I think that the sidewalks are definitely very crowded, and a lot of people have to change sides of the street or go walk in the street in order to maintain their social distancing. I guess a couple of ideas that I had were, one, I wonder if it makes sense for the city to propose sort of rule or sort of conventions for how people should walk on the sidewalks, so that you have like north-south, like one way people walking north walk on one side of the street and people walking south walk on the other side of the street to avoid some of those. But I think that, directly to this point of the safe streets, I think that we should, similar to the parking program or the parking restriction or the permitted parking program, we need to have a set of criteria that streets can meet in order to gain access for their street. I think that my street in particular would I think, like Ms. Beatty was saying, I think that my street would come online with this, because there are both families with a lot of kids, and there are a lot of at-risk neighbors as well. And so, like, I think that both of those groups of people need more space in order to be able to safely go along the street. So I think in the residential permitted parking program, we require, I believe is it 2/3 or 3/4, Mr. Wong?
Sure, it's I believe that one is 2/3.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we require 2/3. So that seems like a reasonable, like, sort of parallel that we could be modeling off of. I think that the other component is that it's probably how arterial is the street that the neighbors live on, because I think that if the neighbors on California wanted it to have a slow street, that would be problematic, or wouldn't necessarily work as well. So I guess, has the city staff sort of thought through what the criteria would be for cities or for residents to seek approval for a local traffic only designation?
Through the chair. Actually, let me clarify a little bit. Let me go back on this a little bit. So we do have a process similar to that already. It's the block party permit process, which you're familiar with. We tried to work on Cabrillo for the Halloween event. So that is the same process where you submit a petition, you circulate it through your neighbors, and you need the 2/3, or that one might even be a lower threshold at 50%. The reason we did not apply that to this one is because the shelter in place order, there's some about having people circulate petitions. So what we thought was that we could expedite this by not having that. We weren't trying to slow down this process. We were trying to get it implemented as soon as possible. So that's why for this pilot program during the shelter in place, we didn't do that. But of course, we kind of have that already with the block party. When we're able to re-establish that and have gatherings, we can do that. But as for this pilot program, because we wanted to try to implement this like we did, we implemented it on Wednesday after working with the school district. So we wouldn't have been able to do that had we gone through the block party permit process. So.
Got it. I guess, yeah, I guess that was the other parallel I was thinking of, was the block party permit. I mean, it's generally for one day versus this would be potentially for like the length of the shelter in place. And I guess the other question, I think the other thing is that the block party requires like physical signatures versus, probably in the shelter in place, we would probably want to do it through some sort of electronic means or asynchronous, or in some way to make it asynchronously to make that safe. is there, is the block party requirement is, what's the number of residents or what's the percentage of residents required for that one?
Like I said, I think that one, I'd have to double check. It's less. It's not 2/3 or it's I think at least 50%, just 50, maybe 50 plus one. But again, with that process, yeah, we weren't able to do that as well because yes, ideally, and if you would at the council meeting, the council supported doing something like this, but one of the big concerns they had was this was coming top down from them down because we weren't able to, the commission wasn't able to hear it. We weren't able to have this because of the shelter in place order. We weren't able to work that way. And we also wanted to, again, implement quickly. So if we could have contacted folks to try to get that, we would, but we don't have anything that has a database that has everyone's email address, only residents that we have. We have to do physical mailings still.
Sure. Yes. No. And I guess I would say I'm very appreciative of like the quick progress that's been made in putting this into place. It's been really impressive how quickly and thoroughly it's been done. I think that I'm not necessarily talking about I think that it's more like for the future, how do we set up a framework so that people in the future or the neighborhoods in the future can implement this and we can make this into like a scalable program that allows blocks to then to do something similar. Does that make sense?
It does. And we can look into that. I mean, I imagine if we get some feedback on this, other streets may want to do it and we can work that way. But again, this is our way of advertising it, so to speak, right? We've gotten some positive feedback. Folks asking for other streets. Some of those other streets are El Camino in California, so I anticipate that's not going to happen. But for more, and we've indicated that, you know, for other streets, this is part of it. You know, the feedback we get, we'll take a look at. And again, we can try to take this back to council. This is only for the shelter in place, but moving towards the future, you know, the commission we can have a discussion on that. And yeah, we have no issue with that.
Okay, cool. I guess one question is like, in terms of like scalability of this, I can imagine that there are a number of neighborhoods that would want this, but like in terms of like signage and support for this, that could be potentially challenging. I guess, is there a lighter weight version of this that we could then make scalable for as many blocks as want to participate in this?
This might be it. I mean, right now, if you've gone out there, we just have A-frames with signs. I mean, this is a little bit more even involved in a block party because there are multiple signs, but there are A-frames listing, you know, road closure through traffic, and they're set up and we can pick them up, you know, put them out, pick them up within an hour, you know, within an hour, you know, depending on the workload of folks. So this is probably as quick and dirty, so to speak, that you can implement.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, for my personal interest, I went out and saw that you can purchase these like fabric local traffic only signs that just like, they're like the square ones that like are 48 inches and then they just go on like a little tripod. And you could just have some of those. I guess, would that be sufficient to work?
We'd like to, you know, try to put compliant signs out, because if that goes up, you know, hypothetically, if that you were to do that, I imagine to go through the block party permit process.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that. If someone else were to put it out and they just see that and they put it out on theirs, they've not gone through the process. So I think we'd like to try to keep it where we at least have some involvement, so we can at least let, you know, the parties that know, for instance, you know, Halloween, you've been to that, PD knows that street is impacted, right? We provide that word of mouth, whereas, you know, there could be another street, someone put that up and everyone looks like one, but it isn't.
Okay. I guess though, one question is there a mechanism whereby we can provide the community sort of notice that this is an option available to them to pursue? I mean, I think that if we're wanting to have the public feedback to sort of say that they want it, then I think that they also need to know that there's like an option to have it. But I think that we also, to your point, we also want to make sure that people aren't asking for El Camino and California and Broadway to be closed. I guess, is there a way that we can actively solicit the expansion of this program and sort of spell out the criteria that communities or that neighborhoods need to meet in order to make this happen for their blocks?
Sure, through the chair. I think what you're seeing it. This is the start of it. You know, the first project that we have out there is Carolyn to advertise that, and then we've got the community BPAC to advocate for such things as this, and that's probably their big role to continue this, right? And you know, that's why there's a block man or a neighborhood block manager for this, right? We've provided flyers to her, so she has that to pass it out. So and again, we're monitoring feedback. We've gotten some feedback on our DPW at burlingame.org website indicating, hey, this is great, we love it. And that's where we get some of those comments, but we got some of them that were, you know, again, another item to add, you know, I think folks are closure of Burlingame Avenue, which seems to make sense. But then we also we're working with the downtown bid and the businesses to see how feasible that is, because there's obviously concerns with that, because if right now they're surviving on pickup, if we close it, where do vehicles go to try to pick up food? So again, this may be something that we can continue once we've gotten past this. We at least have some mechanisms in place where we've tested it and we can use those as examples. But as far as right now, yeah, it's just the input that we get through the any feedback we get through the DPW email right now.
Got it. Okay, so like I think so basically, probably anyone who's listening here should probably, if they're interested in implementing this, then talk with their neighbors and try and get several of them to sort of say that they're interested and email in.
Sure, and it was in e-news as well.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'm really excited about this program. I think that Commissioner Londer's ideas on improvements make a lot of sense. I guess the one question, as I've been through Burlingame by Burlingame High School recently, it seems as though there's not that many staff that are there. I guess the one question is whether Burlingame High School would be willing to park in the aquatic center parking lot and then go to the high school, because that's probably just as close for a lot of those people, so that you could have the full street. I guess is that a potential possibility?
Through the chair, you know, we've spoken, or we've been in contact with the high school principal, and they, for whatever reason, they maybe have materials they have to haul, so they need that. And just something else to point out, even though we just opened the program this week, next week from Wednesday to Friday, it will be we'll have to reopen the road for a short time, because the Burlingame High students are returning to school and they're picking up materials and I think diplomas. So we will reopen it, and then after Friday we'll close it. We'll close it again. We won't allow parking on Carolyn, just so we don't have to notice that again. So they'll just have access to the roadway, because I imagine they're not going to have the entire student body there at one time. But yeah, so that's what it is.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair Wetton, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Sure. I'm not sure I have a ton to add. I did walk through that area before the closure, and one observation I would share is when you have an area where there's not a lot of traffic that would otherwise be there, is you have the hot rodders. So when I was walking on Carolyn with my daughter, we were north of Oak Grove, but there was a guy who's just basically speeding up and down the corridor because he could. So I think there's good safety reasons if you have a sort of a fallow corridor like the one we have on Carolyn. There's good reasons to shut it down because you could have some bad uses of it. I want to pick up on something that Ms. Beatty said that has been on my mind, which is she had noted that part of the idea here was to really encourage slow streets as opposed to closed streets. And I think in hearing this discussion, I think it is worthwhile, and maybe we should just put a pin in it for the future agenda items to really think about something broader, but not necessarily closing streets. Because when we're talking about closing streets, you have all this administrative overlay of figuring out whether the residents want to go along with it. You have, how do you distinguish between the people who live on the street and people who don't live on the street? How do you have deliveries? All these residential streets have an incredible pace now of delivery trucks coming in and out, and closing them is a big challenge. But what I think is really, really important is there are people out there walking a lot more. They are, without much warning to drivers, deviating into the street so that they don't walk by each other. They're observing good social distancing. And unfortunately, in those cases, good social distancing sometimes means not the safest pedestrian movement. And I think it's really important, we've talked about this before, to think about traffic calming and slower streets really throughout the residential neighborhoods of the city, where we have people walking all over the place and zigzagging out into the street to avoid walking too closely to each other. And I think that would be probably where we should focus our efforts, because I think we could spend a lot of time trying to close a single street. And the time and expense we spend doing that, we could spend working on slowing traffic in broader parts of the city. And I would be very interested to hear what San Mateo and Redwood City is doing along those lines. Because if I heard it correctly, they are doing something that's not street closures, but are slow streets. And I think that's something that could positively impact all of us here in Burlingame while we're home during the quarantine and out walking a lot.
Thank you. Good comments. I agree. Just to mention briefly before I give my thoughts is that, although the suggested speed limit for slow streets is 15 miles per hour, that is not enforceable. If you had seen the handout, you'd have to actually change the speed limit of the street, which obviously is a great undertaking. So it's suggested and encouraged, but so talking about slow streets, I'm going to be on a different page than the rest of you, but I hope that you can listen to my concerns. Originally, I read about this in the New York Times. And I thought, oh, that's really a great idea. It's kind of like Bicycle Sunday on Cañada, where you can, close a street and make it safe for all ages to enjoy. My concerns are, in this time, we do not want to create a place where people from outside the neighborhood are going to emigrate to because it's a good walking path or it's safe to walk on the street. I mean, our goal is to keep people spread apart and dispersed through the Easton Addition, Lion Hogue, and not concentrated. So I have no problems at all with the current street on Caroline being closed because it doesn't abut neighbors. It's kind of, I view it as an extension of the park in many ways, and just giving a larger public space for people to enjoy. My concern would be if you start taking residential streets and making them slow streets and having people obviously from outside of that neighborhood and that street walking there, then you start to get clusters and congregation, which is definitely not what we want. Whether we're social distanced or not, it's still ideal to have everybody sort of doing their own thing spread out across our town. I also know that, a lot of residents feel uncomfortable with the idea that a lot of outsiders that don't live on their block are suddenly going to be walking up and down in front of their homes. So when they're leaving their house or they're having deliveries, they feel that it might open them up to some exposure they wouldn't otherwise get. And then to Howard's point, there are gazillion deliveries every day. So there still are going to be FedEx, UPS, and Amazon Prime vans going up and down streets multiple times a day on residential streets. And I don't really think we want to make people feel like super comfortable letting their kids ride their tricycles and scooters and everything in the street, because there still will be traffic. It's not, it is not to be misunderstood as like a so much safer place. When you read about other towns that have done this, they've been mostly big urban areas where they closed down a big, wide, broad street that wasn't so residential to allow like a big open thoroughfare for people who otherwise really have no choice as far as walking around on small residential streets like in the Easton Addition or Lion Hogue. And I think it was really a very different problem and solution for those towns. When I first heard about it, I thought, well, that is awesome, but that's not really ideal for Burlingame. Another thing we talked about was, I spoke with Andy Wong about this when he wanted to give me a heads up that City Council was going to be discussing this, and other streets that might be, conducive to this would be like Broadway and Burlingame Avenue. But I think that would be a death blow to those restaurants that are barely hanging on purely, with pickup. So I think that if you make it at all inconvenient or more time consuming to go and pick up your salt and straw or your pizza or whatever, pick up something at Delphina, that would be not a great service to those restaurants that are still hanging on by a thread. So I do like the general idea. I mean, I would like it if there were no cars driving in Burlingame at all. I like that idea and I understand the concern, but I feel like the practicality of it and the epidemiologic aspect of it, I am against it. So other than Carolan is great, that's fine, but I would be strongly against spreading that to other streets in the neighborhood for those reasons. Yes, Commissioner Londer.
Yes, thank you. So I would agree with what pretty much everybody has said. And I'm particularly concerned, this is the first I've heard that Carolyn will be opened up next week to possibly inexperienced student drivers or high school drivers that are going to be coming down Carolyn with people in the streets. Like I said before, the first week there was just no parking signs, and so Carolyn was like wide open. It was like cars were going through there faster than normal, and little kids were riding out into the street. They were playing in the street as they thought they could. And I saw one kid almost get hit. If I and several other people didn't yell at the kid to stop, he would have probably gotten hit by an oncoming car. So I'm really nervous about opening the street up, but yet having people think that they can still, quote, play in the street. So if the street is going to be, and I don't see why people coming to the high school can't go across by the donut shop and come in through the south entrance to the high school and then do their business at the high school and then go back out the same way they came and leave the barriers up and keep that protected area without cars being conflicting with people, in the street. And so the two of them together just presents a very dangerous and quite unsafe situation, similar to what you're talking about in the neighborhoods where there would be parked cars and there would be delivery trucks and there would be other things. And a vehicle going 15 miles an hour can still do some serious damage to kids who happen to, dart out into the street. And even the most vigilant parent sometimes has a hard time keeping their kid, safe for those first 15 or 20 feet. And that's all it takes is a few feet out in the street before you get creamed. So it's a very dangerous situation, and nobody wants their kid or anybody else's kid to get injured or themselves or their grandparents or whoever. Nobody wants to get injured by a vehicle going even 15 miles an hour. I mean, and the person who hit somebody would feel terrible as well. So I think the only way to avoid that kind of conflict is to almost literally close the street. And if a driver needs to go down the street because they live there, well then you're presenting a certain amount of difficulty. I don't know what the other cities do, but ideally the kids could do that, but I don't know how you resolve that conflict between the cars and the kids. I would like to see places where it would be safe, like a park. But we obviously can't go to parks these days, so I'm not sure exactly what the solution is. But I don't think when there's cars and kids in the same place that the kids are never going to, or the pedestrians or the cyclists are never going to win. So I'm not sure what the other cities do. When I look at some of the pictures from other cities, it looks like they have those kinds of conflicts, and it just takes one car to change lots of people's lives forever. So that's all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
The Chair,
Yes.
just like to point out that today's e-news, there was an update letting folks know that the program will be suspended for those 3 days, just trying to spread awareness. And also, and Sergeant Perna can confirm this, but when we talked about the opening up the street for those 3 days, Burlingame PD will have staff to help control direct traffic during those 3 days. Or I'm sorry, there's 2 days that it will occur, Wednesday and Friday, I guess, or when students are coming. So.
Thank you. I think that will be huge, actually. Do any of the other commissioners want to make another comment?
So I'm just wondering why the street can't remain closed as it is, and people just use that one driveway in and out of the high school. They're not going to have the entire high school there at one time, I wouldn't think. And they could just park in the parking lot on the south side of the building or along the horseshoe, or I think even alongside the north side of the high school between that and the football field. There's some parking over there, and people are just going to have to, if they have to come across the tracks, they're just going to have to come across by the donut shop and not use Carolyn in front of the high school. And then the people would be virtually, perfectly safe, and there would still be access to the high school. And the only inconvenience that would be is you'd have to cross, by the donut shop instead of maybe at your preferred Oak Grove crossing. Just an idea, rather than opening it and closing it and causing more confusion and more work and more, you could, have a, if you wanted to have an officer at both ends of the closure, just make sure that people don't weasel through somehow. Sometimes people try to do that, but and to make it, especially clear that people cannot go through during those 3 days.
And through Chair, I don't know why the school needed the entire, I think maybe it's that, like you had mentioned, the familiarity of how they get in and get out, and trying to change it on them on a day, maybe it caused some. But I think part of this is, we wanted to implement this as soon as possible, and it just happened where the school is doing theirs. We could have delayed it, but we wanted to at least get this started, get some input, and then we'll continue it, until the order is lifted and then this changes. But we want to try to get in place as quickly as possible, because that's, again,
right. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. But somehow the parents are notified when they're supposed to come, or the kids were notified when they're supposed to come to the high school. So in that same way of notification, you could just notify them and say, the only way in is through Mangione Way, or whatever the name of the
Mangione
street
Way.
is. And you have to come across, if you need to come across the railroad tracks, you can only do it at the donut shop. And that way you get the word out to them. And then it wouldn't be on again, off again, on again, off again kind of thing. It would just be what it is. But that's just my suggestion. So for whatever it's worth.
It was heard, and that's what we had initially attempted to try to do that. But in working with the school, that this is what their needs are.
Well, okay. It's still our street.
All right, any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing. So my family and I walk almost every evening, and I would say 80% of the time they want to walk on Burlingame Avenue. And I want to respectfully disagree with you, Chair, that I think it would actually be a good thing for Burlingame Avenue to be closed and more people, it would be good for the businesses to have more people walking on the Ave. It's big enough that social distancing shouldn't be much of a problem. And our city's best in blue there could enforce that people are keeping their distances and wearing masks as they should. But we just love walking on Burlingame Avenue. It's a beautiful street. It's rare when you can walk down the middle of the street. Only on Christmas when they shut it down for the Christmas parade. At this time, I think, it'd be something to consider, if not every day, some of the days during the week, to give people an opportunity to walk on Burlingame Avenue. So I think that should be considered by council, and I think it would actually be good for business to have more people on the Ave.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Wong.
So again, Commissioner Martos, some of this has been thought out. So right now, the downtown businesses are going to be developing a poll just to find out which businesses or what businesses support this. Because when I was at the economic development meeting, there were concerns from some of the businesses that this, as Chair Israel had indicated, this could be, that could doom them because of what they need. There were a lot of concerns with that, and we're trying to work it out as far as, well, maybe they designate a street to pick up that's only exclusively for pickup. But then other things to consider is similar to the arts event that happens downtown, that there needs to be some clear way for emergency access in case something happens on there, where they need some buffer space. So things like that are all being considered and putting into it. And again, feedback from the community is important, because if those businesses say that they don't support it at this time because of this. So and again, we're specifically talking about implement this pilot program during these shelter in place order. What happens after, when things hopefully return to normal, that's a different discussion. But as far as these things, that's, we're being brought up and it's being actively discussed, and hopefully within, I can't remember when the next meeting is, but they may ramp it up so they can find out this information sooner, because again, it's about trying to support some of those local businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, do we need to, as a group, come up with any unified statement regarding what we've just discussed, or is this just up for discussion this evening?
Just an informational item. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up of what's happening, as well as, a lot of the input that we get. We've heard some of it, some of it was new, and that's good. We'll try to take some of that for what it's worth and input. Like, thank you, Commissioner Londer. Some of that's vital. But yeah, no, this is all it was. Just give you guys a heads up and then get your feelings on it, because obviously you guys walk the streets or drive the streets and ride the streets. So
Yeah, we're all streetwalkers. Thanks, Andy.
All right, on that note, let's move on to item 6D, enhancement of 3 uncontrolled marked crosswalks along Peninsula Ave between Anita and Humboldt.
And sorry. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I just also wanted to clarify that not only on this one, we'll be talking about the enhancements of these 3 crosswalks. Also, we'll be discussing the relocation of a crosswalk on this at Arundel, but we'll get into that. So thank you for that. Next slide. So as part of this, we'll give you a quick overview of what's being proposed. We'll give you the project locations, discussion, you can obtain feedback, and then we'll go over the next steps, potential next steps after that. So next slide. Again, Peninsula Avenue is a roadway we share with the city of San Mateo. It splits down the center line, and the section that we're looking at is from Anita Road to Humboldt. And there's some uncontrolled crosswalks, meaning along Peninsula, there's no signal or stop sign on Peninsula. However, the minor streets do have controls. The 3 locations that we're looking at are Peninsula at Stanley, Clarendon Road, and Arundel Road. Currently, each of these intersections has 1 crosswalk across Peninsula. It's a high visibility crosswalk, ladder style. And what we're proposing is to install the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at these 3 locations. These are the beacons that you've seen through the roundabout and on Broadway. The 1 crosswalk at Arundel, we're proposing to relocate from the east side of the roadway to the west side of Arundel to improve the visibility of the rapid flashing beacons there. And per the vehicle code, an existing crosswalk may not be removed unless a notice is provided 30 days in advance of the scheduled removal. We had placed a notice out there prior to the shelter in place. And what we're doing tonight is just this part, we're just providing the community an additional input. We received some input with the posting that was originally out there, and this is just another one of the residents requested. Next slide. Just to give you a quick look. These are the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, in case you weren't familiar, push button activated. Next slide. And whoops, thank you. If you look where these red bars are, those are the locations of where the crosswalks are. That represents going up and down is Peninsula Avenue. Starting on top is Stanley Road. The middle is Clarendon, and the bottom is Arundel. That gives you the spread of where the crosswalks are. And we'll do a quick zoom in. Next slide, please. The first one is Stanley Road. Again, there's the crosswalk on the east side of Stanley Road. And what we'll be doing is installing these rapid flashing beacons along the crosswalk, kind of kitty corner of the crosswalk from each other. Next slide. Here it is at Clarendon. Clarendon, it's on the crosswalks on the west side. Again, there's those beacons. And then lastly on Stanley, I'm sorry, next slide on Arundel. What we're proposing is, you can see the crosswalk is there on the east side of Arundel. We're going to relocate from there to the west side. And from this photo, you can kind of see one of our concerns and why we're doing this is there's that batch of trees that's there on the east side of Arundel, and that would inhibit or have some impacts on the visibility of the rapid flashing beacons. So hence the relocation. Let you go over, let's see, sorry. So next slide. So what we were looking for is hopefully a motion of support from the commission tonight on these improvements. Our next step is to continue and work with our colleagues in San Mateo to actually implement and get these put in as soon as we can. So with that, ends it.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Do any of the commissioners have any comments that they want to make? Commissioner Londer?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wong. I missed the first crosswalk. Is it also going to be on the west side of that intersection?
I will go back to it. The first crosswalk at Stanley
Yes,
is going to remain. It's currently on the east side of Stanley.
On the east
It will
side.
remain and get beacons.
okay. And the only reason or the main reason of moving the one on Arundel is just for visibility of the crosswalk because of the landscaping and such.
That is correct.
Okay. I think it's a great idea because Peninsula is as we all know, a very wide and busy street, and cars are really going fast. And I suspect that if anything, they'll be going faster in the future, given the fact that it may have an interchange with 101 coming down the pike. I don't know if that'll happen, but if it does, then Peninsula will surely have more traffic and more need for those flashing beacons. So I think that's a great idea.
Sorry, just through the chair. One last thing, Michael Sy is also on this. If you've probably seen him on the Zoom call, but he's here if you have other questions too. So we'll be on this together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really like the penthouse view, Mr. Sy. Any other commissioners? I mean, I have no objections. I trust the staff and it sounds like a good plan. So I have nothing to offer really in discussion. Commissioner Martos or
Yep.
Wetton, does
Yep.
anyone want to speak?
I do have something that I wanted to add or ask. So I think I understand the crosswalk at Stanley crosses Peninsula to get to CVS. Is that correct, Mr. Wong?
I believe so. That's that shopping center with the
Okay. And then the one at Clarendon gives access to Celia's restaurant and that little chain of restaurants there. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And then at Arundel, I think there's another restaurant and a Shell station or something there. Is that correct?
Sure. On the south, actually, we can get back. I think that's slide 7, but on
Yeah, I think
southeast corner is the Shell station. On the southwest corner is, I believe it's a Japanese restaurant.
Right. Okay. Okay, see, I just wanted to confirm that. So I wholeheartedly agree with this. I cross Peninsula in those locations. And while you do have those zebra crosswalks there, I don't feel very safe. I'd love to have a flashing light to get across that road. So I'm in support of this as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Bush, any comments?
Yes, I'd say that I concur with what Commissioner Martos said. I think that the Stanley crosswalk is really super helpful when getting across to the Safeway and the pharmacy. I think that when I cross there at night, I do feel unsafe, and so I think that having an additional beacon would be helpful. I guess one additional thought that I had is I know that these are the uncontrolled crosswalks, but I think that the crosswalk from Humboldt across Peninsula is very challenging for pedestrians, and particularly bicyclists trying to go across the Peninsula overpass. There's not really a great way to get across there, and so you see that most bicyclists actually use the north side sidewalk to cross there. So I know that that's not the purpose of this particular meeting, but as we're talking about crosswalks across Peninsula, I think that it's helpful to keep in mind that that we do probably need a little bit more support there in order to make it accessible to get to Coyote Point.
Thank you, Commissioner Bush. We'll note that, but that's the signalized intersection, right, of Humboldt and Peninsula.
Correct.
Vice Chair Wetton, do you have any salient points to bring?
No. I defer to my wise fellow commissioners who live in much closer proximity to that area and are very familiar with it. I trust their judgment and their observations. That's all. I have.
Excellent. Okay. Do I have a motion?
Oh, through the chair.
Oh, sorry, yes.
I think we need to make sure that, I don't think we opened it to the public.
Oh, my goodness. You're right. Are there any public comments?
I did not receive anything through the email.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, seeing no public comments, do I have anyone wanting to make a motion this evening?
Sure. I will move that we accept staff's recommendation to install 3 rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the intersections of Peninsula and Stanley, Peninsula and Clarendon, Peninsula and Arundel.
I second that motion if you're done.
I am done.
So we'll do roll call. Commissioner Bush,
Yes, I second.
Commissioner Londer,
Yeah, approve.
Commissioner Martos,
Approve.
Vice Chair Wetton,
Aye. Approve.
Chair Israelit.
Approve. Okay, let's move on to the information items. Number 7 on the agenda. 7A is the engineering division reports.
Okay, thank you, Chair Israelit. Let's quickly give you a couple just updates on what's been happening in the city. First off, we'll go over the Broadway grade separation to let you know that we're just about to start the final phase, the final design of the project. Actually, not the final phase, but the final design for the project. The Joint Powers Board, who's kind of shepherding this, is they send out their request for proposal for the final design. And that went out on the 5th, and on the 29th, they'll receive all their proposals, and then we'll be part of the interview process that gets to select the designer for that. So that's something we're looking forward to. Again, this phase is fully funded, and we're still seeking the remaining 300 million. But hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to give you an update on some of the grants that we've been proposing on. We've gotten close. So next, that you're definitely thinking about is lots F and N. Lot F was closed on April 1st. And due to the shelter in place, staff suspended the valet assist program we had on Lot A. And also, we've also held back on Lot O. We've pulled our signs for that parking temporarily. So when we, again, get back where there's the need, we can get those redone. So just letting you know on that one.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
So just quick, can you just, in context, can you tell us, has the construction continued through the quarantine? Is it still at full speed?
Sorry, so because the parking garage was part of the housing portion, it was able to continue. So just having gone past there on Wednesday, they've got the columns up, and I believe they got the first raised deck on. There's a ramp that takes you to the second level. So it's moving along. I don't know the exact schedule, but it's moving.
That's good news. Okay, great.
Next one, Paloma Sanchez traffic calming. I just want to let you know that the petition process on this one has been completed, and the neighborhood didn't reach the level of support needed to move on to the next phase. So we will be bringing this item back to you folks, and or to you folks, and then you'll get to have some input, and then we'll see what else we can come up with. So that'll be coming up in a future meeting. Hoover Elementary, we're currently working on, there's that asphalt path on Easton from the Easton gates to almost where the school is. Was pretty beat up, so the PTA's been concerned about that and brought that to us. We were trying to do that as part of the some additional paving work that we had a contractor for just as this all occurred. So that kind of fell apart because our contractor's now done. So we're working on the design for this, and then trying to add this to an upcoming resurfacing project. So hopefully we'll get that done at some point soon. And just prior to this, I also wanted to, I was at a school meeting and indicated that I'd like to, be able to present this information to the Hoover PTA. So this occurred just, they haven't gotten back to me on that. So we're trying to get them updated. And for, but most of you know on here, at least 3 of you, the Lion Hope traffic calming project, the draft report that we have for that area has been done. It's on the website at lionhopetrafficcalming.com, where you can download the report, review it, as well as provide some feedback. This report is going to be brought to the City Council on Monday. Mr. Sy will be presenting, so you can say hi to him there. But I think those of you on the CAP were notified of this. You should have received an email that indicated that. So that'll be coming up. And then the last one we have is Oak Grove Carolyn traffic signal. We're underway for the design of that signal. And when we get to at least more than a conceptual or some sort of draft plan, we'll be bringing that to you, showing you folks that plan. Also, one other item on here that's not quite on here, but it was one of our short-term agenda items. Lot W, we're working on installing poles there to put the smart meters on. Right now we have a pay station, so one of the changes in order to convert that to short-term parking was we'd had to put in poles for meters. So that's should be occurring sometime soon. I think we've procured the poles and are trying to install those in the housing. So, and then we'll get the smart meters, and that'll be the last change we made on those short-term, long-term conversions we did. So that is it from the traffic tonight. Yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. Through the chair, Mr. Wong, is the old rec center under construction, destruction? Is that in progress? Are they going to start taking that down?
That's one I didn't drive past, but
I did. I was just there this morning.
It looked pretty dark last night, and
the fire department is currently using it for drills, and they punched a bunch of holes into the roof and are, using their hoses on it. So it's empty of all things, and will be coming down very shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I know I was at City Hall the other day and saw staff in the conference rooms like who I didn't recognize them, and apparently they were shifting staff. They're in trailers, at least the Park and Rec staff. And I just reviewed this past week the contractor's traffic control. There'll be some trailers put on Burlingame Avenue, and I believe we're going to close that sidewalk on the rec side, and people will have to cross Burlingame Avenue and walk on the other side. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other day they actually started a small fire inside there because I saw smoke coming out, and they could just let it go and they'd save the demolition costs, I guess. But no, they're doing all kinds of exercises there and training, so I guess it's going to serve its final purpose.
Kind of a silver lining. They get to, some good comes of it. All right. Any other reports, Mr. Wong?
That is it. I believe Sergeant Perna now has the PD's report.
Okay, Sergeant Perna, we were able to receive in advance the list of the traffic accidents, which luckily look like they're down because people aren't driving. So take it away. Please let us know what's going on.
Sure, of course. For March and April, the accidents are down. There was only 12 for both months. There was 3 injury accidents, none of which involved bicycles. 1 DUI crash. We've had reports of speed. I know that I've gotten some calls directly. Some of you made comments regarding speed. However, none of the accidents' primary collision factors were attributed to speed, the majority of which was unsafe turning movement. We have been conducting additional traffic enforcement, areas where people are complaining, and obviously trying to keep up with Carolyn and, you know, the increase in bicycle and pedestrian traffic. But I personally haven't seen a big significant increase. I think there's a perception of that because there is a lot less traffic. So when a car is driving down a street at, say, 30 miles per hour, you know, which is faster than 25 miles per hour, it does look like it's going significantly faster. Any questions or comments regarding the accidents?
Well, first of all, Sergeant Perna, I appreciate you managing to do this meeting while on patrol.
Live
I
from
see you're on
Burlingame.
top of things in downtown Burlingame. Oddly,
Right.
It's remained light. I don't know how. It's only remained light for you, but I'm glad that you're on top of the situation. Things seem quiet down there. I mean, I was the one with the comment on the hot rodding. I think that it's the you know, it's the unobserved phenomenon, the tree fall in the woods phenomenon. I think if you were there to see it, the guy wouldn't be hot rodding up and down the street.
Exactly. I mean, we get a phone call, we'll send an officer there, and of course cars are going to naturally slow down because there's a black and white police car parked there. So, you know, we might not see the same issue. It's kind of the only way we've been able to kind of combat that now is in areas with, you know, a lot of complaints, we'll send a motor unit or a police officer there and sort of, you know, monitor the area for a while, but they aren't seeing those violations probably because the police cars do stick out. And I mean, if as long as in the end that the people slow down, that's what we're looking for right now anyway. It's just, you know, if a police officer could help with some traffic calming during the day, then that's great. That's fine.
Yeah. I think I see a jaywalker behind you, by the way. You better.
I have to say, I do love your background.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just like Mr. Si's penthouse downtown. So, great. Well, I mean, it's nice that there's not a whole lot going on. It's a relief. Commissioner Martos?
Yeah, I did have a question, Sergeant Perna. So I, as I mentioned, we walk up and down Burlingame Avenue almost every evening, and I can't help but notice the poor officer that's in the Apple store every night. Is that like a rite of passage for rookies or something? They have to hang out in the Apple store for 8 hours or something?
It's to be honest with you, it's quite the opposite. Apple's paying for an officer to be there. So, you know, that's like a paid detail outside of so those officers are there on their days off, paid by Apple, through the city, but paid by Apple. So, it's sort of a sought after gig just because it's
okay.
They are making you know, they're supplementing their income with it basically.
Yeah, I mean, I felt bad for him. I wanted to bring him a sandwich or something. He looked really bored in there. But if that's a hot gig, then I won't feel that way anymore.
No, I've done it myself, and it's not bad. But yeah, it does get a little lonely, a little boring. But you know.
Got it.
It's not the safest detail either. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of.
You're sort of in a fishbowl too. People like to take pictures of you, and it's strange.
And how is your staff? The other question was, how is your staff? Anyone? I know there was one sergeant that contracted coronavirus and recovered.
Yeah, for the most part, everyone's healthy.
Everyone's okay.
Officer Vega did go public with his, you know, that he was donating plasma and doing those things, which is great. He's healthy. He's recovered 100%. He's back on patrol. We don't know for sure. I don't know how much of those details I can go into, but it's not really known, you know, if that happened, you know, while he was on duty or at home. But he was sick sort of at the beginning of when this whole thing started, and then he happened to be tested, and it turned out that he was, you know, that he was.
Yeah.
So he's doing great. He did his quarantine. You know, he recovered. He did his quarantine. He was back to work, and you know, he's if you see him, he's happy to tell you all about it. You know, he's been on the news. He's talking to reporters and whatnot. So he's doing good. It's at least it shed a little positive light on the whole situation that, you know, people that are scared that, you know, you can recover and you know, hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Great to hear, and thank you for your service, Sergeant.
Of course, thank you. Appreciate
that. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 7C, farmers market. I assume that not being essential providing grocery type foods, we're not going to be doing that during shelter in place. Am I correct?
Well, I haven't checked. I suspect that if the farmer's market is there, we could be there, but we're not going to be there. So I haven't really checked because I won't be there, and I wouldn't expect anybody else to be there. So
Yeah, I believe it is up and running. But you know, again, like it's an essential service, but like an
Right.
information booth at this point would probably not be, you know, of that ilk. So
We were there
all
this
right,
evening. There
something
were
really normal
5
again.
booths open now.
yeah, I don't know if they're even accepting non-food vendors or not, but I haven't had any inkling to be there, so I haven't asked.
Okay. Then moving on to the next item. Are you guys having any problems hearing me?
No.
Okay, sorry. It just said my internet connection was unstable, so I wanted to make
Oh.
sure that it was still working.
It's okay. We're all unstable too.
Yeah. What can I say? Any communications to the commissioners over? I doubt a lot is happening, but has anyone received any communications? Okay, then let's move on to our subcommittees, item number 8. I doubt that any of us have met or been working on our subcommittees in the past 2 months, so I think it's probably safe to just sort of slide through that, which brings us to number 9, future agenda items. It'll be unclear if we will be meeting in person for a while. It may be like this again next month, but we'll let you guys know as soon as the city lets us know. Does anyone have anything that they want to bring to the next meeting on the agenda? Vice Chair Wetton.
Yeah. Two things. One, just bringing back the prior discussion. I would like us to talk about, presumably in the next meeting, given the time sensitivity, traffic calming in light of the change in conditions, and particularly highlighting dramatic increase in pedestrians who are veering into the street fairly regularly for social distancing reasons. What we can do to try and encourage traffic calming when that's going on, because it is, I think, a heightened risk that we're encountering. And I don't know if that's a formal slow streets program, whether it's just pushing in e-news or something in between those two levels of action. And then the second thing is, I wouldn't mind revisiting Broadway parking. I think, again, the change of conditions presents an opportunity for us to think about how we load balance Broadway. We're seeing obviously a tremendous amount of takeout happening on Broadway, which actually I think is a very good thing because it's helping keep our restaurants on Broadway afloat, it's helping keep people fed. And it might be worth looking again at adding additional, right now it's irrelevant, there's plenty of parking, but like thinking about how this plays out in the future, how people's future habits may change on a more permanent basis, including the balance between going to a restaurant and sitting there and eating versus takeout, whether we want to consider adding more 24-minute spaces, and thinking about all that in light of all the sudden changes that have occurred.
Maybe you and I should have like a subcommittee meeting prior to bringing it to an agenda item, because I mean, like right now, they're not even, the meters aren't even working, I don't think.
The first suggestion is in response to the current conditions. The second suggestion is more using the current conditions to think about more long-term changes in behavior and whether it's a good opportunity to consider an adjustment. And I'm not on the Broadway subcommittee, Chair. It's really, so this is the forum for me to bring it up.
Oh, darn. I thought you were on it with me. No, actually, it's
Commissioner Bush.
lucky.
It's me.
Mr. Bush. So maybe you and I can even, get together at some point. And any other items that you guys want to see on the agenda? I can't think of anything to add.
Through the chair.
Yes.
One that we will probably, we'll try to bring back is Sanchez Paloma. We talked about that in the staff report, but one I didn't mention that we may is the bike ped master plan. One of the items is we've gotten to the alternatives layout. So we can show you folks some of the alternatives for some of the proposals of the streets that we're hoping to maybe turn into some type of facility other than a class 3. And that would be a joint meeting with BPAC. We'll have them on there. That way we can take care of and be most efficient, especially during these times. And that's what we're shooting for. So I think we'll talk about it at our pre-agenda meeting, but this is one that I think it's time sensitive. So we'll try to get it to you folks.
Okay, great. Then I think that wraps it up. So we'll adjourn the meeting at this time. Thank you guys all for joining our virtual meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody stay safe, be well.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Ditto.
Be safe, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Good
you.
night.